Hey, I managed to qualify first after a long time again. But that's not what this video is about. It's actually a deeper look at the new Mercedes AMG GT3. I've spent some time in the Return of the Silver Arrows event, so an all-Merc lobby. And what better way to look at and talk about how the Merc drives, where its strengths and weaknesses lie, and also where it fits in my ranking of the GT3 cars. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I made a video ranking all the GT3 cars from the perspective of a beginner to intermediate driver. I'll link it for you if you haven't seen it yet. But before we get to all of that, let's actually watch this race start, because the first lap was kind of a dangerous one for me at the front.
Green flag.
And the lights go green and we are off, starting P1 as I said, but the guy in P2 did have a good start and he's braking a little bit deeper into T1, so I'm trying to take it careful here. You can see his perspective, or from his bonnet basically, and we're gonna take a look at that perspective a little bit more because, well, there were some interesting things happening, let's say it like that, for this first lap. But don't worry, we're gonna talk about the Mercedes in a bit. But yeah, first I just wanted to take you along for this first lap on Spa. In this special event series, I don't think we did have that a lot, that we just have one make events, but it's kind of cool, just celebrating the release of the new car. You can see once again the guy behind me is still keeping up. He had a little bit of a moment through Eau Rouge, but yeah, he is definitely still on my tail, and you'll see that he'll attempt some interesting maneuvers. I'm not quite sure where he thought he was going there. I don't think he was in striking distance for ascent there, but he seemingly thought so. I really didn't expect that, so I of course didn't leave the door open. Luckily he still managed to brake in time, and that did send him back a little bit. But it's not the end of this. We're gonna see a little bit more of him, at least in this first lap. You're gonna see later why I chose this race to talk about the Mercedes, because, well, we'll have some time to talk, because, well, you'll see. Take a guess why we do have that time. Maybe you can, if you've seen my other videos so far. But so far I'm managing to keep it in first position. By the way, decided to take the darker, like black, grayish livery. A lot of the other people just taking the default silver one. Is also quite a pretty one. There's also a yellow one I did see, not really my favorite, but yeah, some cool choices that I didn't see when I first flicked through the liveries that were available. And yeah, now we're gonna see coming up to bus stop. Let's take a look at his perspective once again. He was so far away and still decided to go for a move there. He did get the car stopped in time, so good on him. Maybe I was a little bit early on brakes there. Probably was, but I feel like I was still like very much first at the apex. I know that's kind of a meme by now, but yeah, you can see behind he's still definitely there, but this is now the point where we start lap 2, where I actually pull ahead a little bit, and I think that's also because the guy behind me is pressured a little bit from behind as well. It's like 0.2 seconds behind him is number 3 on the grid right now, so I have some breathing room, some space now to actually try and pull away. And yeah, that is actually what we're gonna do. So all of you that thought, well, HG is gonna have some time talking about the car because he's gonna bin it again, well, you probably had the right idea, because I do that a lot, but actually this time no. In this race, actually managed to keep it really clean, had a very good race, and as you'll see, actually didn't have much pressure from behind from this point onward, which was a nice change of pace for sure. I mean, of course, races where something interesting happens is mostly what I want to show you on the channel, but for the topic that we'll talk about here, which is the Mercedes and how it drives, and if I could recommend it to beginners, that is way easier done in a race where I don't have to do play-by-play casting of stuff that's happening, either in the race with other people or just with me doing stupid mistakes, which I usually do, but yeah, in this race and with this car, I didn't. And that's, well, hopefully at least partly to me improving a little bit in my driving. then again partly to the updated tire model, which is, as I said in my previous video, definitely better and allows for a little bit more driving on or towards the limit. And yeah, it does allow for some more moments that you then can catch. But it also is in huge part, I think, due to the car. So let's talk about it. But before we do, maybe let's take another listen. I've shown you this in the previous video, but yeah, the sound of this car is, in my opinion, really amazing. So let's take a listen once again. Yeah, I don't know, I just like this sound, I really do. Not my favorite V8, I think that still goes to the Aston, but still, both from the inside and the outside, the Mercedes really is a nice sounding car to me. From the other aspects, so the visuals of the car I personally also quite like, especially from the outside. The cockpit itself is totally serviceable, you have quite nice visibility through the windscreen. No windscreen wiper in the way, which to me is always a plus. I really don't like the windscreen wipers that obscure your vision, or if you have like some stability bars that are also on the windscreen, that always just annoys me, I have to say. But yeah, in this one, nothing there. Good visibility, and you can definitely see that the, let's call it, snout of the car, the bonnet, is quite huge for the Mercedes. That's something that you sometimes gotta account for, especially when fighting really close or when directly behind another car. There is quite a bit of car still left after your windscreen, more than in a lot of the other cars. But other than that, yeah, as I said, pretty good. The dash is nice, and I also like the rear view mirror. Even though I usually just look at the one up top, still the monitor just very much in the center, very visible, is quite nice as well. And that's basically it from the just visual audio standpoint. Let's now talk about the driving, which is probably the most important thing to a lot of you and me as well. So I have not driven every car since the update yet. I still want to do that, but the ones I've driven that I knew from before the patch, I feel like most of the time they are pretty much very similar to how they were before, just a little bit easier to push, to really go fast, because you are not as afraid to bin the car by just pushing a little bit too fast into a corner. That's just the general gist of it. I feel like the ordering, at least so far from my testing of the cars in my video ranking all the GT3s, is still the same, at least to me. So I still would say that a car like the Corvette is probably one of the harder cars to get used to as a beginner, and the BMW is probably still the easiest car to drive if you are a total beginner, just because of how safe it is and how easy you can also push it to go fast. But the Mercedes is really up there, and that is because, well, of some factors. For example, the brakes. I think the brakes are really outstanding on the Mercedes. Not only do they have good bite, they also don't feel like, even on the default settings here, we are, I maybe should have clarified earlier, we are here, and yeah, just in general, while talking about the fixed setup. This series was also in fixed setup, so the only things we can adjust are ABS, brake bias, and traction control. And well, from a braking standpoint, in the fixed setup, this is pretty spot on. If you wanted to be a little bit more aggressive, you have a lot of play, because it on default comes at ABS 9, so the understeer setting, so you can go to 6 or even 3 or lower if you prefer that, if you don't want ABS interfering as much. So you do have some play there, And then of course also you can play with brake bias, which also can help you out with just having a little bit more turn-in on braking. But the braking itself on these default values is so stable and so nice that even for more difficult corners than you would find here at Spa, I was talking in the previous video about Aqua Minerale on Imola, that really still is very easy to handle in this car, while other cars on brakes can be a little bit flimsy. But that's, I would say it's mostly the mid-engine cars. The front-engine ones are all pretty nice on brakes, but they can be a little bit tricky if you reduce ABS and yeah, put brake bias more towards the back, for example. But yeah, that's the brakes. That makes the car very stable to drive overall. When talking about the other side of things, so the traction control when accelerating, I've played a little bit with the values. You've probably seen my video on what I think are the best TC settings, but that was before the patch. I would say after the patch those settings still work, and I'm still figuring out if going lower on TC, which you can do, I found, so the car doesn't feel like worse there, but I'm not quite sure if you actually will get faster by reducing TC, especially TC slip, or if that, like before the patch, just is quite superficial, and higher TC slip, at least before the patch, just made you safer, and while not sacrificing any lap time, or just barely any. So yeah, still something to figure out. In this one I'm driving TC 3, 6 and 9, so I did basically my default setup, but I did reduce TC slip to 9 just to see if I could notice a difference. I was in practice also driving 11 and I couldn't really, so I need to play with that more. But that's beside the point for this video, but I just wanted to address it because I've seen this question floating around the comments on my last video as well. But yeah, with these TC settings, the car definitely also on throttle is very stable. Maybe even too stable. That's like one of the downsides of the Mercedes. It does have quite a lot of on throttle understeer. You can definitely notice this if you, well, go into a corner, you brake normally with trail braking, and then you are at the point where you want to accelerate. If you are not fully at the apex and pointing towards the exit of the corner properly, going on throttle hard will make you just go straight a lot of the time. So you need to be either really rotated properly before you go on throttle, or you need to pick up the throttle a little bit easier, so slowly, because otherwise that's like the biggest downside to me of the Mercedes. It just understeers quite heavily. But that also is, in part at least, a good thing for more beginner drivers, because as I said previously, if you're a beginner, you probably don't have that fine of a throttle control, so just being able to stamp the throttle in a car just to get used to the driving in general is pretty nice. And yeah, it's really hard to spin this car when just pushing down the throttle. I know I am quite aggressive on throttle myself and I haven't spinned it yet. Other things to note is curbs. So here at Spa, most curbs are quite tame anyway, but I've also driven Imola, for example, where I also didn't find any problems with curbs. So you can definitely attack them quite a lot with the Mercedes. It doesn't really get faced by that. And yeah, that overall makes the Mercedes, to me, one of the best choices for GT3, especially for base game owners who like front engine cars. Because as you've seen in my list where I did rank all the cars, well, we had one front engine car at number 1, which was the BMW, for me the best beginner car, and it still is, but then followed the McLaren and the Lamborghini, 2 mid-engine cars. And the other front engine cars, like the Lexus and the Ford, while decent, weren't up to the level of the BMW for me. Now we have the Mercedes as well, and I can say from my perspective, with the testing that I've done now, the Mercedes is up there with the BMW. It's almost there, I would say. I'm really not sure at the moment where I would put the Mercedes. either directly behind the BMW in P2 or directly behind the McLaren in P3. I think that is kind of interchangeable. The McLaren is also a very stable car, but it drives a little bit differently than both the BMW and the Mercedes. So I think for now, I think the order would be, for me, best car BMW, then McLaren, then Mercedes, then the Lamborghini. And well, then the rest, you can find the rest of the list in my other video if you're interested. So yeah, the Mercedes really is a very, very good car for beginners. And since it's free to base game owners, I think it's one of the best choices. If you don't want to drive the McLaren, I think this is the choice. And that to me is really nice to see, that a car that is being added free for everyone that owns the base game, that drives this nicely, is just an awesome addition, because a lot of people who want to try the game should have access to cars that are easy to drive, that are stable, and that, well, they can have fun with. And I think with a Mercedes, you really can't go wrong in that regard. So let me now know what you think. Where would you rank the Mercedes if you have tested it yet? Feel free to also put your top 3 GT3 cars down in the comments so we all can compare. If you're interested in more details of what I think about the new tire model that also launched with version 1.0 and how it compares to the old patch, then check out this video that I made on release day, which covers the topic in a lot of detail. Leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already, because that really helps the channel grow. Now all that's left for me is to be very happy that I finally had a race win once again, and to thank you a lot for watching. I've been GT Racing, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.